When I hear you talk about resistance, I feel this tension because the Christian message is so much about forgiveness, and it seems like we want our youth to be more loving and forgiving. And so, how do you fit that call to forgive with resistance that's needed, for racism?
I appreciate this question because it comes up all the time, because people don't want to have this hard conversation with young people. They don't want to have it with adults. So, let alone talk about it with teenagers. They think this is just unheard of. It's just you're just making problems, stirring up a mess, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's important to have these conversations if you're going to be authentic and real with teenagers. So the whole idea of resistance plays into the fact that we must imagine something that's going to push back against what we're experiencing. If young people can ritualize ways to heal themselves and lament, then they have to have a natural segue into something that's going to be constructive. And that's what I mean by resistance. It's a way of being what I call oppositional imagination. And this whole idea of oppositional imagination gets into resisting status quo to recreate something new that will allow everyone to flourish. And I think that young people have the capacity to do that. And adults can join them in that area of resisting so that we bring about change. Now, the church will say, and their members of the church will say, well, why come we just can't forgive and just get along? Well, forgiveness has to have accountability. And there are a number of scholars who've written about this that we can name that talk about forgiveness. But the type of forgiveness that most people are talking about, let's put these issues aside, let's forgive and forget. And I don't think that serves young people well. To say, well, let's just forgive and forget. Because when somebody has offended you, called you out of your name, formed policies against you, and you don't even know you're being hurt from, and you just struggle every day, and then you cycle down into this hopeless abyss because you don't know how to just survive. We're talking about systemic racism that people cannot name. And I am saying we cannot forgive unless we know what we're trying to deal with in learning what all of this morass is all about. And I'm talking about the morass of racism in a systemic nature now, because not everybody is able to name that. And I'm saying help young people realize it, give them rituals to move through and then become resistors as a result of. And then we can move to redemptive acts such as forgiveness. But forgiveness is not this nice, it's going to be all right, and let's move on to this next by and by. No, we're not talking about that at all. We're talking about something that's far more than that. We're talking about a way of thinking about racism that holds people accountable for putting in policies that give certain groups advantages. For even shaping the way a classroom is organized that gives certain people advantages rather than others. An educational system is organized that gives certain people advantages that don't give others advantages. We're talking about things that affect young people on a day-to-day basis that they need to be aware of, that they want to change. And by changing them, therefore, we find ways to forgive little by little. The church has it kind of confused about what forgiveness is all about. And that's what I think needs to be explored in a broader context. I mean, that's a whole question by itself. Forgiveness and race, how do you manage that? How do you negotiate that? That's a conversation with itself that I'd love to have at another point. But what I'm saying is that we just can't rush to forgiveness because the type of forgiveness has accountability that's equally important.
Let me follow up with that then, and ask you again, being very concrete, like with a group of youth I'm working with, So I'm using text, we're learning the language, we do some analysis with visuals and memoirs. How do you, over a period of time, because I expect this needs to be an extended conversation,
Yes.
what do you do from week to week to sort of carry you through this? And a sort of a B part of that question is, especially when you're doing this outrage and resistance, how do you model or guide you so that that is a positive and not, I mean, you don't want to just get them into trouble. How do you kind of help them through this experience, perpetuating it from week to week and helping them go in a positive direction with it?
I think you put your finger on the process and how it needs to shape itself. We need to actually allow certain spaces for this type of work, retreat settings or small portions of a youth setting.